lawyer, activist, David Winker. Mr. Winker, good morning.
Nice to be here. Good morning. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Well, we want to talk about a lot of news going on, both nationally and here in South Florida. And we'd love for you to participate. We'd love to know what you're thinking, your comments. So get involved. Give us a comment. All you got to do is make your comments known here on Facebook, and we will respond to whatever it is you have to say during this program. So let's start it out with the election going on today in Georgia, David Winker, and as I start this watch party. So election day in Georgia starts today as both senatorial seats. The election will culminate today. Early voting has been going on, and they've had a record over 3 million votes cast early in those races for the two Georgia Senate seats. It's the most ever in the history of runoffs in Georgia for such seats being cast in advance of Election Day. If the Democrats win both seats, they will control the U.S. Senate. Currently, we have 50 Republicans, 48 Democrats, and 2 independents sitting in the U.S. Senate. So it would shift the power to the Dems and make maybe governing a little bit easier for Joe Biden. The latest 538 poll. Now, 538, if you're ever interested in such things, 538 is a website that aggregates various polls to give you an average. In the 538 poll, it has challenger Jon Ossoff slightly ahead of incumbent David Perdue, and challenger Raphael Warnock slightly ahead of appointed U.S. Senator Kelly Loeffler. Both races really are toss-ups. And most people think that the Republicans will win, but they thought that President Trump would win Georgia as well. But here's the whole point of this and the conversation I'd like to have. And again, if you'd like to participate in this conversation, just comment. But here's the question. Do we want a divided Congress? Do we want the Republicans to control the Senate? And we know that the Democrats slightly control the House. And of course, we've got a Democrat now, which will be affirmed by Congress tomorrow. I'm not even going to get into that debate. Will be affirmed by Congress tomorrow, the Electoral College vote. And seated on the 20th. So the question is, do we want a divided Congress? Is that good? And I pose this question, and I want to get your opinion on it, David. I pose this question. England's system, as we know, works like this. The House of Commons, whatever party wins control of the House of Commons.
They have an election.
They have an election. And whoever seats the most, whatever party seats the most there, then the monarch chooses who the prime minister is. And
chooses from that party.
From the party, correct. And so you have one party that is really controlling the government at that point, much like the Democrats will if they win those 2 seats in Georgia. So I like that. And let me explain my rationale to it. And then I'd love your opinion. No excuses. Then there's no excuses. I'm tired of excuses when a Democrat's in the White House or Republicans in the White House about, well, we can't get participation from the other party. We can't get buy-in from the other party. We can't come to a common ground with the other party. And it's always this, one pointing at another. And so I wonder if that system that they have in England is better because, again, no excuses. If the Dems win the Senate, then we better see some real action over the next 2 years with the Joe Biden administration.
So I have a couple of reactions to it. When I grew up in a parliamentary system, and one of the things I would say is it gets complicated because in
Canada,
but it leads to a proliferation of parties. So you oftentimes have to get a coalition anyways. So it gets a little complicated. But many people here say we need more parties, right? So it kind of would actually probably go to support your position. I think the other thing is let's point out a majority of democracies in the world use a parliamentary system. There's reasons for it. And I think that the reason we have kept our system so long, Andy, is I think secretly Americans like gridlock. They want. I remember at the University of Florida, I had a professor. It was Professor Little. I can't remember his first name. But Professor Little would walk in on the day that the Florida legislature closed, and he would walk in and he would put his wallet on the lectern and say, "You can relax. The thieves are gone. They've left Tallahassee. They're not going to take any more of our money." And I think that there is a feeling of a little bit of that gridlock. In normal times, we want the government out of our lives. We're in extraordinary times, Andy, where we need some help, right? I don't think anyone, I get there are people that don't think we need help, but we need help. We got to get the economy going. There's things that the government can do. We're in Miami-Dade County. Our elderly, seems like everybody else, we can't get the shots to them. Nothing's happening. My 77-year-old mother came to me the other day and has great health insurance, very capable retired math teacher, and she's like, I can't figure out where to go.
But is that the kind of gridlock that we want here? I got a comment from a college grad student, one Kevin Korge. It holds the parties accountable. He's saying
he agrees with you,
and I agree with that. That's my position. No one.
That's your son.
Yeah, it's my son.
Do you guys ever agree on anything?
Usually.
Really?
Yes, usually we do. When he was 16, 17, 18, we agreed on nothing.
Nothing. You knew nothing. That was your fault. You knew nothing.
Right. Now I knew nothing then. Now I know a lot more once he turned like 21, 22, 23. It's funny how that works. But yeah, it's just, there's no accountability. Everyone points at the other one, and it's disheartening for me. I don't want gridlock. I want action. I want to see things happen.
And it's funny that you say that, because I was at lunch yesterday with some Republican friends from a church group, and I made the statement, has there ever been you and I have talked about this, has there ever been a bigger political blunder than Trump not getting out the $2,000 checks pre-election? And then this weird dance where then, last second he comes out after it's passed saying, I wanted 2,000. And it was funny because the reaction of the Republicans was Pelosi wouldn't let him. And it's exactly, I don't even know what the truth is. I just was like, it's exactly what you said. We need our fact checker on that, but Tommy Stitt on that. But that's just a perfect example of the finger pointing, where just everyone points the finger at everybody. So it's interesting. I don't think we'd ever go to that parliamentary system. And I think we're going to go back as the economy gets back going. We're going to want the government back out of our lives. But you bring up a good point. Look at the vaccine.
Here we are, no one knows what's going on with these vaccines. Look at England, for example. England started vaccinating yesterday, their population. They have enough dosages and a plan together to inoculate their entire population within a few months.
It's funny you say it, because it just seems to me like we should just stop everything and get everyone vaccinated so we can get back to work.
Right.
I guess I need an economist to look at that, but it seems like you'd want to just crank, the highest priority right now would seem to be smooth transition of democratic power in Washington on January 20th, and get these vaccines into people's arms.
Yeah.
So we can get back to work.
Well, I think that that is really the big thing going on in America today, is how quickly can we get vaccinated and feel comfortable? Not quickly.
We're going to be the end of the year.
We had Dr. Jack Michelle from Larkin Community Hospital here yesterday. I read in the Miami Herald today, and there was an article in Miami community newspapers regarding Jackson Memorial Hospital, and you can't even get in. You can't even get in to get inoculated. They're having a hard enough time just inoculating their existing patients and their employees fast enough. We saw in Broward, the Broward healthcare system couldn't even take calls anymore for appointments for people being vaccinated. And again, it's gridlock in our government, and I think it emanates from the top. We see it all the time. We don't see it in Florida. The Republicans here in Florida get whatever they want through Tallahassee right away, because they control it. They control Tallahassee. And I'm not saying I agree with everything that happens in Tallahassee, but at least things happen in Tallahassee because they bulldog things through. And then we as voters can say, well, I like the way the Republicans have run our government in the state or not. And then we can decide to change that.
It's interesting you say it too, because you're seeing some backlash now against Danielle, our mayor, our Democratic Miami-Dade mayor, Danielle Levine Cava. Where is she on this? Where we haven't heard anything from our local government on what's going to happen here. This accountability issue is government. Andy Parrish, friend of mine, always says there's nothing that the government does well. We tolerate it, right? We need it for national defense. We need it for police, whatever. But there's nothing it does well. And I think the problem is we're in a case where we're in acute need, Andy, of government help right now. And we're seeing the failings of government. You know what this reminds me of? I remember seeing those poor people after Katrina, waist deep in water, screaming at the helicopters like, we need help. And there was no help. And I think it was the first time that Americans realized, like, oh, crap, we're on our own.
We're on our own.
And this is another example of that.
It is. So we got Gary Allen, but before we bring him up,
Gary,
one other thing I want to just talk about real quickly, and then we can get comments from him. Gary Allen, by the way, has a new show, Main Street, starting here this Friday at Miami Community News.
Wow, exciting stuff.
And his first guest, Ray Abruzzo, who you might know from The Sopranos, was a character in The Sopranos.
He was also on The Practice.
What character, Tommy? Come on, fact check, Tommy.
Some guy that got killed.
Well, so that starts this Friday. But the other thing I just want to talk about very quickly and we'll get Gary's opinion on it and some comments is a gentleman by the name of Philip Esformis, known as the king of Medicare fraud, with the epicenter of the swindling happening, as we know, here in South Florida, was offered clemency by President Trump. He swindled the government out of $1.7 billion in what was termed the largest individual Medicare fraud case in the U.S. And I'm not throwing mud on Donald Trump here, but here's what I've often wondered, and I'd love to get people's comments on this. Why do we allow presidents just to, at the end of their term, okay, you get a get out of jail card free, okay? Why are they the ultimate judge and jury in the United States? And you as a lawyer, I'm interested in your comment about that. We've seen some of the pardons he's granted already, Flynn, Stone. I mean, these are guys that had no business being pardoned.
The thing, Andy, too, is that some of these are flirting with I can't remember what the idea of like you're tampering with a witness, right? It was like, if you're the president and I wink nod to you, like keep your mouth shut, Andy, and I will. Well,
doesn't that seem?
I will pardon you at the end. This smacks of some sort of concerted effort here. Doesn't
it seem that way when you look at Michael Flynn, when you look at guys like Roger Stone? What was the other guy? The really Manafort, Paul Manafort. I mean, you look at those, and doesn't it reek of that to anyone? Did I take a stupid pill or something? Am I the only one that sees this? And by the way, this isn't just about President Trump. It's about all of them. They pardon people at the end of their term, and you're wondering why.
This one is bothering people. I mean, I think back, this has a long history, obviously. I think back when it was Andrew pardoned all the Confederate soldiers. And I think there's this feeling of the country has to move forward. And all this is going to come to a head when Trump tries to pardon himself, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a very interesting problem that I think goes to this idea of there's this arc of history. And I think it was intended for, sometimes it's necessary in times of great crisis to pardon people. And it's bothering people because of the specificity of it, the involvement of the president. You're talking about. I don't know that we've had pardons. I'm not a student of pardons, but when you're pardoning someone who was part of a crime that benefited you, at some point, they're
like Paul Manafort.
I haven't seen legal challenges to that, but it is getting into error. And it's interesting because that's like, on the other hand, you hear the Tiger King, right? They're trying, there's talk of pardoning the Tiger King, and like that outrages people, right? Like that probably outrages people more than.
Well, let's have a little fun with this then, and let's bring up, because the guy who's the king of fun is our good friend Gary Allen. So can we bring Gary Allen? Gary.
Yes. Good afternoon. Hey, and by the way, happy New Year to you, Andy. And I love your show that you do with Romberg. And what a great way to start the new year for me. I get to sit almost close to David Winker.
Well, that's
you just don't have to smell me.
A lot of people love sitting next to David Winker, but okay, let's have a little fun.
And before you leave that, you need to put the graphic up, Tommy, please. From now on, when Gary's on, King of Fun. That is King of Fun, and his show Main Street starting here. It'll be airing live. Miami Community Newspapers, 5 p.m. starting this Friday. Will be a whole lot of fun. Here's how it works, Gary. I talk, then you talk. Okay, here we go. So
I'm used to being a host,
So here's
Thank you, David.
As I share my cup of coffee with you, Gary.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about some people that we'd like to see pardoned. Okay.
Yes.
He just mentions the Tiger King.
Oh.
Now, I got to say, if I could, that's a great one, David Winker, because anyone that can entertain you that much on television deserves to be pardoned in my book. I don't care what he did. I mean, that guy is a character upon characters. We need to get him back on TV. So I say, pardon the Tiger King. That's a good one. Any suggestions, Gary?
Well, I think first of all we need to probably move forward. Can we put that on the shelf just for a second? There's one thing I want to bring up with David.
Here he comes, redirecting our show. Go ahead.
I want to bring this up for David because I think the American people would really love this. In the parliamentary system, isn't there after 6 months or a year a vote for
no confidence?
No confidence vote.
Yes.
Wouldn't the American people love something like that?
I love it.
And then you'd have Trump declaring it
illegal.
An improper ballot.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't care what the Constitution says, for God's sakes.
Yeah. Now, getting back to the pardons, which I know a little bit about, because if you remember, Andy, I was in the White House when Nixon left. As a matter of fact, I was with him the day that we flew him across the country on Air Force One. And you remember that.
Can you move your camera down a little? We want to see your chest hair.
I don't have any chest hair. I'm Greek. Are you kidding me? You know what I mean? I don't have any of that stuff.
I know you got hair everywhere if you're Greek, for God's sake.
Hey, listen, I still got this left.
Yeah, looking good.
You and Winker are like, of course, I'm getting the Jewish skull thing.
Why do you think I wear the hat?
Yeah, sometimes those hats drive me crazy. I heard from my good friend Santa Claus, who needs to be pardoned, that you are losing your hair. But I think we need to probably pardon Florida State University. For lack of incompetence. I think we need to pardon the owners of the New York Jets for just plain downright stupidity all the way around.
Well, they fired Adam Gase, so they're not too stupid.
Did you ever see a guy, Winker? Did you ever see a guy with his eyeballs like this? I mean, he's high all the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's looking in different directions. Well, they show them on the sideline. He hits those whatever they are. Yeah,
the ammonia tabs.
Yeah, the ammonia tabs.
Really?
During the game, he hits them.
Well, Romberg was telling me yesterday the NFL made that illegal. They used to break them, put them in a plastic water bottle, and sniff them. And the NFL made that illegal for them. But
coaches do it.
But I think that there's. You had mentioned someone earlier that you think should be pardoned. Who was that person?
I don't remember.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Oh, yeah. Do you think is he going to pardon Ghislaine?
I don't know. You know what? He did tell her at one time. Remember when she first was indicted and then arrested? He said, "Hang tough" or "good luck" or something like that, which to me is the kiss of death. Like you tell your coach, "Oh yeah, you're my guy for the next year," and then 2 days later, it's like
He's gone.
David Winker walks in the office and says, "Here's your
the Texas Longhorns did to Tom Herman, right?"
Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, another team that needs to be pardoned, and I mean pardoned very quickly for just general incompetence of the fourth quarter, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, absolutely crazy.
Hey, I have to interrupt you. One of the things you missed by not being here.
Yes,
is
sir.
We have Denise with the
Cuban coffee.
The Cuban coffee delivered. Thank you, Denise.
So share some coffee with us today. Look, I'm two-fisted coffee here.
Well, would you put Denise on camera? Let me at least see
Denise,
what she looks
come here.
like.
He wants to see you.
Denise,
I want to see what you look like. Because when I move down there, she'll see me. Hello, Denise. How are you?
Denise is one of the artistic directors here at the newspaper who takes the time to make the coffee.
The Cuban coffee.
We're so appreciative.
That is absolutely wonderful. Do you know that in my family I have a Denise and I also have a Denephew?
I've heard that one before.
Yeah, about 1 million times.
Denise is probably the highest paid barista in the world, right?
Hey, listen, man. Hey,
that joke's so funny, Gary. Last time I heard it, I laughed so hard I fell off the dinosaur I was riding.
Oh, for God's sakes. Here he goes. Listen, and you're the one that keeps talking about David Winker with a winker, and Winker called me numerous times. But let's see, as far as that's political stuff, I think before he leaves office, trying to pardon himself, which I don't think legally he can do. My thought process is at this point, because of that phone conversation over the weekend, is that he is going to now, I believe, resign a couple of days before office. Pence, that goofball who needs to be. Oh God! Did you see his speech yesterday? It went from a political speech to where he was Pastor Pence. And by the way, people forget the reason he became the vice president and he was kicked out of the governorship of Indiana was that he was taking campaign money to pay off his mortgage, and they booted him out as being governor of Indiana. Friends of mine who live in Indiana tell me he's the worst governor they ever had. And this holier than thou crutch thing that the Christians use, and I'm Christian, but I don't use it as a crutch to commit crimes, is a lot of bull. He was like, and I believe that Jesus will come back and he'll take, regardless who's the president, and just straighten out the world. You think Jesus only cares about the United States of America? They created the universe, for goodness sake. I mean, if anybody needs to be pardoned, it's Pence's wife. Dear God, that woman has to put up with him. It's unbelievable. And another person that needs to be pardoned is Andy Korge's wife.
Oh, yeah.
God's sakes. Yeah.
Or granted clemency or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to bring up something you talked about before we went on the air. I already received my stimulus check.
Wow. Yeah, wow.
And I know tons of people in Miami. One that you're very good friends with, our mutual friend, Rick Del Vecchio, he got his for he and his wife. I know people up here that haven't received a dime, but most of the people that I know have received their checks. If you have it set up through your Social Security system, like if you're on a retirement or your tax returns, or if you are, a railroad worker or something, and they already have your direct deposit, I think people are getting those quicker. But Andy, you make well over $75,000 a year, do you not? I mean,
Are we talking about my tax returns here?
Yeah,
on the show, it's not what I wanted to do today.
Oh, and somebody's and Krista Hernandez says that David's wife needs to be pardoned. I don't know. David, but I just think that this whole pardon thing has gotten way out of whack. He's pardoned people just because, like David said,
he pardoned Jared Kushner's father.
Oh,
right.
God.
He's pardoned Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
He's pardoned Roger Stone. He's pardoned Michael Flynn. I mean, does anyone not see a problem with this? I think we should just do away with allowing presidents to pardon anybody. I don't understand what the purpose of that written into the Constitution was.
Is it in the Constitution, David?
I believe so.
Yes. It's in the Constitution. My understanding is in the Constitution. It's long standing. And I think that, again, it goes to the example I gave of President Andrew.
Mhm.
No, what's this? What am I thinking of? President Andrew, the one after the
Johnson.
Andrew Johnson. When he forgave the Confederate soldiers. I mean, that's what it was intended to do, right? To heal the country.
Yes.
And here we are debating whether he's going to pardon.
Wait, didn't Reagan pardon George Steinbrenner for his campaign? Some weird campaign.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe so. Like,
Yeah. And then God.
Tommy.
Yeah. Thanks, Tommy. But the bottom line is that when Ford pardoned Nixon, it was to heal the country. And I truly believe that, because if you go back to Watergate, we were up until then, we hadn't seen anything like Watergate in modern times. Now we've gone beyond Watergate to where it's treason. These 10 or 12 senators that are going to try to vote against, which is going to go nowhere tomorrow. It's treasonous, and they're only doing it for political reasons, because they figure if they can hold on to some of his base over the next couple of years until they get elected or they run. But you know what? They don't understand one thing, and one thing about Donald Trump: he doesn't care about them. If his son decides to run for president, oh my God. I'll start drinking again if he runs for president. But I mean, seriously, Trump doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about anything. But I think he's going to flee the country. I really do. I think he's going to go to a country like the Russia, where they can't extradite him. And that's going to be the end of it. And if he takes anybody with him from his family, I'd be greatly surprised, except for his daughter, who he wants to go to bed with. And he's said that more than once. They're on Biden about his son getting all this stuff from China over. You don't think that the Trump kids haven't benefited, folks, from this clown being in the White House? And you know what I don't understand, David, and you're a man of faith, and I know this, but what does the Christian community think that this guy is a real Christian? He doesn't even know how to read Corinthians 2, chapter 1-5, or Corinthians 1, or he doesn't know anything about the Bible. He holds it upside down. I mean, David, I'm just curious, because I know you're a person of faith as I, but you're closer to a church group or a parish than I am. But what do they think? Do they really think this man is a Christian?
No, they see him. They definitely, my friends, my evangelical friends, see him as a means to an end. They all they care about is his judicial appointments.
Mm-hmm.
And they got what they wanted. And so I feel like, they and it's an interesting discussion to have with them about Christian values and whatever, but they see that, what do they care about? Abortion, separation of church and state. Like there's different things that they do, but I don't think that relationship is going to be studied for years, the evangelical community and Trump. Like, it makes so little sense, to get behind the man of who he is.
Yeah.
And let's just point out, Christina Hernandez.
Oh my God, did she write
commenting,
that?
and she's correct. Trump has pardoned less people than probably any president, or that certainly in recent U.S. history.
It's who he's pardoned.
It's who he's pardoned. That's been the thing. And some of these pardons.
Good job, Christina. Oh, she cited where she got that from. That's interesting.
Good work on Christina's part. Good work.
Yeah, which is true. But again, you get into the question of why are they allowed to pardon anybody, and what
it's so I got to tell you something.
What mechanism allows them to do it? Number one, and number two, why?
I love Gary's perspective on this because of being in the Nixon White House.
Yeah.
It's an interesting. I worked in DC, and one of the lawyers I worked with was a young White House lawyer. His last name was Bittman. And he's just out of school, and he was an unindicted co-conspirator. And he went on to be one of the leading white-collar defense lawyers in DC. Right. And he always, those lessons, like it was a test of the Constitution, right? It was a test of our system of government. Do you feel like the same thing's happening now? Like, are we going to have to Trump-proof our Constitution? Did the Constitution pass the test, Gary?
I think we've gone past respecting the Constitution. I think we have people that are more concerned, as I said earlier, with the $175,000 a year job and a parking space at Reagan International Airport than they are the Constitution. And if you remember the book written by a friend of mine who I'm trying to get on the show too, by the way, Andy, for us on Fridays, John Dean. I knew him very well in California. I knew him in Washington. Remember the title of his book, Blind Ambition?
Yes. Okay.
That basically, if you read the last couple of paragraphs of that, he warned of this. Nixon warned of this. Reagan warned us of this. So did the founding fathers, that they saw there might be somebody like Trump. They didn't envision this whack job who's, frankly, I have a sister who's a psychiatrist, and she believes beyond a shadow of a doubt that Trump is mentally ill. I mean, not just, that he's getting old, he's mentally ill. And if you take a look at the people that have been his mentors, Cohen, his father, these are two despicable human beings that existed on this earth. I mean, Cohen was part of, and I always forget the guy's name, the McCarthy hearings. He was part of that. Trump doesn't know any other way other than Trump. He doesn't care about David Winker or Andy Korge or Gary Allen or Christina or anybody else. He just cares if he's getting away with it. He lives moment to moment, con job to con job to con job. Now,
okay, but let's divert a little bit. Enough of the Donald Trump talk. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some local stuff. And there was one story in the news today based on the comments in that story that really interests me. And you're going to probably laugh when I say this, David Winker, because I always harp on the city of South Miami, where we're sitting right now. But as you know, Sunset Place was sold. First went into receivership with the bank, and then was sold from Federal Realty for a loss of in the neighborhood of about $45 million.
The legal term dumped for a $45 million loss.
For a $45 million loss. And it was bought by a company, I think it's Midtown Developers, and I'm looking for the exact quote, but it was taken over by a company called Midtown Development. And the comment of the president or the principal of that firm is, we look forward to reimagining the possibilities of Sunset Place alongside our community partners. Now, let me, this is what's funny about it. Let me add on to that what Federal said, Federal Realty, which in contrast to them was basically saying in this article, it referenced, and I'll read this to you, Federal's president and CEO, Donald Wood, blamed in part, quote unquote, the fits and starts with the entitlement process. A reference to the prolonged review and initial rejection by the city of South Miami, which he said cost, quote unquote, precious time. Now, you talk mentally ill, downtown South Miami is seriously mentally ill because the commission here in South Miami does everything in their part. They've done everything they possibly can to prevent Sunset Place, which is an albatross in the center part of Miami-Dade County, directly across from a metro rail station. They've done everything in their part to try to circumvent any sort of development in a place where this county that is growing, and this state that was, by the way, the second largest growing state in the United States last year after Texas. Yeah. They thwart everything they can to thwart development in spots along the metro rail that beg for development and people living in it.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar with Sunset Place. Andy, was it there when I lived down there before?
It was originally the Wholesome Bakery. It became the Bakery Center.
Okay.
That didn't work. It got demolished after a huge development there. And then Sunset Place went up. The fact of the matter is those types of malls, Federal Realty did the same project at Coco Walk in Coconut Grove. And you know what? They submitted a plan. It got approved by the city. Bingo, it got built.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In South Miami, they submitted a plan. They tried to talk to these commissioners, most of which won't even communicate with developers as to what they want in their city and what's doable. And you look at downtown South Miami today, you could shoot a cannon through downtown South Miami, and you're rare to hit a shopper, a restaurant goer, anybody in that city. And it's really a tremendous shame in my estimation.
It sounds like City Hall run amok.
Yeah. I mean, the one good thing that they did in South Miami is they changed the election from February to November, because that will bring a huge amount of voters voting for these people that run for mayor, commissioners in this, podunk city, I like to call it, in the middle of a metropolitan area. So it's curious to me, and just reading this article again in today's Miami Herald tells me how bad government in South Miami has failed the people in their community.
What you read just sounded like word salad to me, coming from this company. And by the way, Christina thinks you ought to run for commissioner.
We asked.
Well, I got to live here first.
He doesn't live in South Miami, so
right?
I've asked him.
Oh well, that's true. But David, I mean,
although one thing, real
Go
quickly, I think Grant Miller might put a cot in here for me, and then I could say I live here at Miami Community News. And
Shout out to
I know
Grant.
He's done that before.
That's all it takes for some politicians to have their grandmother's address for them, and they can run in certain districts they don't even live. It's been being done. Hey, from my hometown of Chicago, it's been done forever.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, it has.
But let me ask you something, Andy,
Yes.
and what's going on with the development? You would figure in South Florida, and again, I've been gone for 20 years. I'll be home hopefully soon when this COVID thing is better. But what's going on? I mean, I remember the Falls. Is that still around anymore?
Yeah, I mean, all those
The Falls. It's interesting. The Falls. This is like that thing of winners and losers. Harry, it's like the Falls did okay because it's an outdoor mall, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like they fell into a category that people felt more comfortable going to.
Yeah.
But in general, this retail thing, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But that's going to be the biggest problem right now. When I remember, as a young kid, my goal being I need to own commercial real estate.
Yeah.
I saw as a lawyer, I would do these leases and you just lock in this place for 20 years and everything would be great. And now here I am representing all my clients who, are about to lose these properties because they've lost a tenant. And there is no hope of a future tenant, right? I mean, there's just in the immediate future, there is such an excess of office space right now. Yes. They're never going to fill. I mean, it's
but here's a good question. You bring up a great point. Which governments are going to negotiate through that change in our world well, and which governments are not? I venture to say probably South Miami's not. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds
but it's a great point. There's people yesterday. I met with a guy who's the CFO of a multi-billionaire in Los Angeles. And he told me a story where in LA, their company, Hayam something, or I can't remember, he's a very big donor to the Democratic Party. And their business, they had 2 floors in Los Angeles that actually overlooks the Hollywood sign. They were paying $3 million a year in rent for those 2 floors. Their lease came up in November last month, or 2 months ago, in November of 2020. And he told Hayam, the owner of the company, as a CFO, we're all working remotely. Why are we renting this space? That's $3 million in your pocket. And they opted out. They didn't renew their lease. All their employees are working remotely. And he said, in a year, we'll reassess and probably get a more industrial looking type space,
or a space where you have meeting rooms,
whatever,
temporary offices,
right?
Where you come into the office once a week. Exactly.
Less office space, less people working in. I've talked to many people I know that lease commercial space, professionals, lawyers, accountants.
Right.
They all tell me the same thing.
Yeah,
that they're going to be leasing less space. So government is going to have to try to negotiate through that, right?
Yep.
I mean, and that's one of the sidebars, if I can use a legal term here, for COVID. It's making companies realize we don't have to have a big office. We don't need 27 stories in a building to get our thing done. We can have our employees work at home. We keep our overhead low. We can maybe pay people a little bit more. And these businesses that will rent out your office space for so much a month. If you want to have a meeting, anytime, anywhere, just book it. You know, you can come in and pretend this is your office kind of thing. I forget the term what that is, but that's one of the many things about COVID that's going to change our lives for not a long time, but a short period of time, say the next few years, because again, we haven't defeated this thing yet. But that's one of the side things that companies are downsizing and not downsizing, but saying, stay home. Do your work at home if you can. I mean, there's certain jobs you can't. And I think rental space, as you said, David, succinctly, is going to be, they're either going to have to bring their prices down to make it more affordable for people, like renting an apartment complex. I mean, to give you an idea, you were talking about LA, Andy. When I lived in LA, I paid $900 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment, my wife and I. That same apartment today, because I know I have a friend who lives in that building, is $3,200 a month.
Yeah, it's something. But here, let's talk about one other thing before we close the show, which
sure
we had talked about before, David Winker and I, which is murders are way up in all cities throughout
Crime
America.
is down. They say crime is down because no one's driving anywhere, no one's walking around.
Yeah.
Crime in general is down, and murders are through the roof.
Well, that's couples are staying together more at home more often now.
That was my first. That was actually my first comment.
Yeah,
that was my first comment. I said I came this close to wanting to murder somebody myself several times in the last.
You know what I'm surprised? Here's a question, David. You're a lawyer. You have buddies that are divorce lawyers. Is the divorce rate anticipation to go up, or do you think that this time together is brought people together?
No, it has not.
Well,
the answer, it has not brought people together.
Well, one of the things that I heard from a divorce lawyer was divorces are up, but not because it was hard to get them through the courts for a period.
It's hard to get through. It's hard to get through. And I got to tell you, I'm doing a couple of divorces, and I hate doing divorces, and I do them for special clients who just say, like, you're my lawyer, like, that's it, you're doing my divorce. And I feel like I'm good at it. I'm capable of doing it. It's not complicated law. It's actually kind of like, in some ways, it's a relief procedurally. It's kind of more simple.
Isn't it like a business contract, dissolving a business contract? I mean, I went through a divorce.
It's like an easier than, but it's the emotional side of it sucks. And you see that. And so with all that being said, what I say, Gary, is my legal advice: don't get divorced.
Yeah.
Like the only person that makes out is the lawyer. Like, it is such a bad process for everybody involved. And it's interesting because I agree with that. And I can't get my divorces finalized. You can't get hearings. It's a disaster. And it's interesting because, ironically, you know who's seeking divorces right now? So 90% of the time it's the woman that seeks the divorce, because the husband. Yeah, it's funny. And normally, and the husband is out, what does he do? Of course, husbands being husband, they just go cheat, right? They're like happy to have a wife at home, takes care of the kids. They go cheat. So it's the wife who asks for the divorce. Men are asking for divorces right now. Can you figure out why?
Because they're in the home with their wives. I don't know.
Do they show, like, I'm not making any money? Like, now's the time. Let's do these financial calculations right now, because my income, zero. Or I'm negative because of this. And so now's the
time to get the
like, let's go.
And by the way, getting back to what Andy wanted to talk about, do you think that the murder rate has gone up because of the economic aspect of this country at the moment? I don't know specifically. I mean, I heard you say before the program that there was a murder on the footsteps of Homestead, one of the city halls.
Yeah, right on City Hall, on the steps of City Hall.
A shootout at City Hall.
Do you think this is being been brought on by the fact of the economy and the way we are in the world, that people are so angry and frustrated and their tempers are just getting the best of them, and boom, there it is?
There's a lot of anxiety in America. There's a lot of, I think, as you say, tempers rising in a short fuses in America right now. I don't think the situation has helped, but it is very curious and disturbing, obviously, that it's happening in America right now. I mean, murders are up in, I think, 21 of the top cities in America.
I think we had in Miami-Dade, I think we had 14 murders over the holidays.
Well, you guys go to the south side of Chicago, you'll get that in one day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible in Chicago. It's just horrible. I mean, it just is. It's gangs and
listen. So before we leave, because we gotta bug out here.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing me on. By the way,
but real quickly, Gary, give us 15, 20 seconds about the show on Friday, Main Street.
Main Street, we're going to have on the very first show, we're going to have Ray Abruzzo, who was on LA Law. And we're also, he and I are going to talk about our Stephen Boschko, because Boschko was responsible for his success and some of the success that I had in LA. And then the following week, we have Jeffrey Mark on, who is an encyclopedia of Hollywood knowledge. If there's an actor that existed he didn't know, they didn't exist. But Ray Abruzzo is going to be joining us. I also have a call in for Adrian Paul, the Highlander. I also have Loretta Swit, who may be joining us. Will Schreiner is going to be joining us. I'm going to try to keep it. And I'm also gonna bring in some local talent too, comedians and stuff that I knew over the years, and we're all gonna have some fun. And I thank you both so much for sharing the platform with me this morning. I appreciate it, David Winker. You know I love you with all my heart. I can't wait to be home. Andrew Korge, please, I'm going to pardon your wife after the show because she deserves it. And thank you so very much. And of course, Andy joins me. He's my co-host on the Friday show. But I thank you both so much. And to everybody out there who, to the Millers and everything, thank you. God bless you all very much. Have a happy new year. God bless. And thank you both very much.
There you go. So I tell him 20 seconds because I really gave him a minute. Okay.
I got to,
and that's my strategy.
Hey, so Winker, to know who Ray Abruzzo was on Sopranos, Little Carmine Lupertazzi, the cop, Little Carmine, yeah, known for fixing wet t-shirt contests in Miami Beach.
I mean, well,
Good
that's
job,
great.
fact checker.
What was he gambling on the wet t-shirt contest?
I'm not sure exactly what his angle was, but he was known for that. Yeah.
What was the angle? Well, thank you for that, Tommy. Thank you, David Winker, for
Great to
joining
be
me
here.
this
Thank
morning.
you.
On the Andy Korge Show. We're going to see what happens in the election. We started about the Georgia election. There could be a change in power going on in the U.S. Senate, so we're going to know more, although it's probably going to take a few days to count those votes again in Georgia. We'll see how that pans out. But thank you so much for sharing your cup of coffee with us this morning. Coming later today, Romberg and Korge from 6 to 8 p.m. Hey, I say the best sports talk show in South
doubt.
Florida. So tune in with us today again at 6 p.m. Myself and our good friend Brett Romberg right here at Miami Community News. Have a blessed day. It's going to be cold tonight, so bundle up. We'll see you tomorrow right here at Miami Community News.